Camila Cabello was destined to flop. Here's the thing with her. CXOXO was the only thing she could do at this point in her career. On her fourth record, she was firmly out of moves. Her rebrand into a hyperpop adjacent quasi-it girl has yielded mixed results. Do I think it has been entirely successful? No. But it also hasn't been the total flop and embarrassment that I had expected it to be post I Love It, which is a song that has actually grown on me, especially since Brat came out, which is kind of a backhanded compliment towards Camila, but we'll get into the Charli and Lana of it all later on. But for right now, let's stick to our protagonist. I think something we've all been asking ourselves is, was this a real rebrand? Not exactly. This project truly feels like a rough draft or a collection of half-finished sketches, elegant and sometimes interesting bursts of something genuinely new for Camila Cabello, the artist. But she also feels a little hesitant to truly go there, or perhaps even unsure of what going there even means. CXOXO is, as Pitchfork described it in their review, a transitional record for Camila Cabello. I'd actually call it a repositioning. She said in an interview with The Independent that her motto for this record while recording and creating it is to live the questions now. This is a Rilke quote, and Camila uses it to explain her creative process by saying, "There's a lot to be confused about when you're becoming an adult, so I think that you should just live your questions." Today's video is going to be not just a review of CXOXO, but a kind of total overview of Camila's career and her journey as a flop star. They have been trying to make Camila Cabello happen for years and years on end, and I think it's really frustrating that she hasn't fully connected, because I do believe that Camila has all the sauce and all the ingredients required to be a successful pop girl, perhaps even a main pop girl. It's probably too late for her at this point. I want to give you a succinct overview of how we got to see XOXO and why a flop is really in order for her and something that she needs in order to reset and maybe reach her full potential again in the future. If you're new here, my name is Zach. I am the Swiftologist. I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture. Obviously, I talk about Taylor Swift, but I branch out. I talk about other artists all the time because I love pop music. It fulfills me. I am deeply invested in pop girls specifically. So if you like any of that, then this is the right place for you. And before we get any further into this video, we simply must have a word from our gorgeous sponsor, Rocket Money. Thank you so much to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. I recently found out the other day that I was being charged like $10 every month for some sort of direct TV subscription that I made at the notorious Flowerball Super Saturday Night Evening so that I could either watch Taylor's set either live or on demand, I don't know. But I was gagged to see that all these years later, they had still been getting me. And that's where, if I had my wits about me, today's sponsor, Rocket Money, really could have helped. As Swifties, we are often signing up for nonsensical streaming platforms, credit card plans, or other corporate billing procedures in order to gain temporary access to something Taylor related. So for example, the chance to win tickets, merch, or watch a live stream. I was getting emails from a humane society in Chicago because I was so desperate to get tickets. This clogs up your inbox and makes it impossible to sift through your actually important mail, as well as to stay on top of what you're actually spending. Luckily, Rocket Money is here to help as the personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. With their help, I've been able to safely and securely identify recurring charges and cancel unwanted subscriptions. I can even cancel from within the app itself with just a couple of taps, so no need to worry about customer service calls for all of my anxious girlies that don't like talking on the phone out there. You may remember that Rocket Money is a returning partner of mine, and as I mentioned in my last video, I'm also using Rocket Money to set budgets and analyze my spending habits. It automatically monitors my spending by category, and trust, I get notifications when I exceed my spending limits. Rocket Money has helped save its customers up to $740 a year when they use all the features, with over $500 million in total of canceled subscriptions. To save more and spend less, join the over 5 million members using Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/Swiftologist or click the link in the description to get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with premium, and that's rocketmoney.com/Swiftologist to get started for free. Thank you so much to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. Though CXOXO is certainly imperfect, I think it's the most interesting thing that she's ever released, and that is a triumph. I will always take interesting and semi-bad over boring and semi-good any day. Pop has become extremely left of center as of late, with Brat going full mainstream, Chappell Roan's meteoric rise, and Sabrina Carpenter's humorful but more traditional, yes, pop domination. These girlies are showing that there is an appetite for a weirdness, the girl who can laugh at herself, be ugly, be insecure, let her guard down in front of the world, or at least give us a little wink about it. It's a real yearning, I'd say, for vulnerability that we're having, a step beyond the social media age's quest for authenticity. Vulnerability is something different. It can be strategic and a performance. We are always demanding too much of our pop girls, but now it seems like we are requiring flesh and blood. There are ways to avoid this kind of exposure. Chappell is a good example. Make yourself so outlandish and campy and pair it with atypical excellent pop songs, and you can bypass the kind of nitpicking, obsessive personal details that someone like Sabrina Carpenter has to rely on for her first #1 hit, Please Please Please, which was aided hugely by a video featuring her famous actor boyfriend. Camila is in an awkward position. She's never really been a girly who has been prepared to get ugly. We need to keep in mind that Camila is more of a traditional pop star in that way. I mean, consider her roots, the polished, supreme perfection of a girl group, straight into a sanitized generic pop stardom, largely also aided and abetted by a famous relationship that had everyone saying her name, but not many people wondering or really caring about who she was or what was inside of her beyond her fame. You're bopping to Senorita, you're jamming to Havana, you're putting My Oh My on the playlist at the pregame, but apart from her stands, you're not mining the lyrics for clues or really paying attention to what Camila is saying. Her work has never really been able to transcend whatever insular fan base that she has and will always have as a famous person. If you can believe it, since Camila went solo in 2017, she has never headlined a proper tour. Her first scheduled outing was an arena tour that was canceled due to the pandemic, but really, there was a lot of chatter and buzz about it getting canceled anyway due to low ticket sales. Now, the big question is why? I have always wondered this. Camila is one of the most interesting case studies of B-level pop stardom. I truly think that she has all the raw material to be great, hence why I've been interested in her for so long. She is an incredible performer. I think she's very charismatic on stage, and she's a competent and unique vocalist. When you hear her voice, you know that it's her. However, the music. From the start of her solo career, she has been obsessive about being a songwriter and also having creative control. And that is in no small part due to her very close friendship with Taylor Swift at the beginning of her solo career. I would definitely assume that Taylor, like she issues to all of the other artists that she mentors, encouraged her to write her own songs. Yet to me, each and every one of Camila's records has either been a concession to what her label is asking of her or a non-committal attempt at gazing at something new while doing the same thing that she always does. Havana blowing up the way that it did really set up quite a rigid constraint for Camila as an artist, and she has tried to mimic its success with pretty much every lead single until I Love It ever since. Havana literally reset her entire debut. She started that era, her first era, with a double drop of I Have Questions and Crying in the Club, both good songs which were scrapped to start over since Havana blew up kind of accidentally, and sidelining those two songs that were the first visions of her real creativity, as she had mentioned, shoving them off the album entirely. Before I get into Camila's creative struggles, I want to note that I intended to make this video about CXO totally flopping and kind of panning the record, and while yes, the record has definitely flopped metrics-wise, also in the sense that it's gotten lost in the fray of the much better albums during this brat summer, I have to commend Camila for finally doing something compelling. She is at the very least being playful and free here, which is a feeling that I never got from her earlier records. I think she's trying to be some version of herself and getting closer at that version with each song that she writes. There were two things that kind of turned me around on thinking that this was going to be the worst album ever. First of all, Brat Summer. Charli putting out a project that is so fully realized and actualized in her XCX bag made Camila's feeble attempt at Charli XCX-ness feel a little bit more palatable to me. But once I heard Brat, I also realized that CXOXO is not what I thought it was going to be. Camila, apart from I Love It, is not trying to do hyperpop here. Whether that was her intention or not is kind of up for debate, but the final product is a lot more sparse. And sonically, it really does get at something close to this mysterious 305 sound that she was going on about in interviews that did not really come across clearly on I Love It, which, by the way, I have kind of started to come around as loving. Isn't it crazy how we humans can change our opinions? I really hated the song when it came out, but something about it clicked. Something clicked. The second thing that turned me around on this project on the whole was watching Camila's Glastonbury set. On paper, Camila is a perfect act to book for a festival. She could do a shortened set before a headliner with just enough hits to maintain the crowd's interest. Glastonbury is like as big and prestigious as it can get for a musician. It's like a career-defining occasion to play. And you know what Camila did when she got on that stage in broad daylight? She pretended that she was on the streets of Miami, a literal adult playground constructed on stage, her vision of Miami, I should say. It was some fictional back alley with an industrial skater's ramp, a swing set, and a roundabout. It looked very desolate and very caught between adolescence and adulthood, which is kind of what this record is about. Camila played pretty much all of her new record with very few of the crowd pleasers, and she was into it. You could see on her face that she was really enjoying performing this new work. And you know what? You know who wasn't into it? The crowd. The crowd was not into it. And Camila knew that going in. She said it on stage multiple times. I almost feel bad for playing all of this new stuff, before quickly saying in a very kind of cheeky, petulant way, actually, no, I don't. It's clear that for the first time, this music really means something to her. Despite the fact that the crowd isn't hollering along to these songs the way they do to Havana, Camila is getting something else from performing this live. The joy of living in the art that you made, not something that you made to do well or to fulfill a contract or to have people scream back at you at a show or to appease executives in a boardroom, the thrill of delivering the exact vision that you dreamt up, executed, and delivered into the world. And after seeing the record performed live as well, I actually thought that it was a great set. It made me like the album a lot more. The choreography was awesome, the staging was really unique, and Camila was on. Did the crowd like it? Well, no. As I mentioned, they were visibly bored. All of the reviews of her show noted how sparse the crowd was and how disinterested they were, but there was definitely an element of playing for the people at home involved. Many of her dancers had like GoPros mounted onto their helmets, and at times Camila seemed to be solely performing to the camera, with her back faced away from the audience entirely. She said in the interview that I mentioned earlier with The Independent that this record, CXOXO, would find the people who needed and wanted it, and you know what? She was right. And she was mugging into that camera at Glastonbury for all of the girlies at home, me for example, who would eventually get it. The normies who wanted to scream Havana and spill their beer be damned. It takes balls to do an elaborate heel turn like this at what is probably going to be your only Glastonbury set in your career. These crowds also, British crowds, can get really nasty if you don't please them, especially at a festival where people, have had to try so hard to attend. And yet, Camila's performance was really peculiar and engaging. It certainly wasn't bad. So even though the crowd was bored, they clearly didn't think that she was not performing well. They were just letting her rock. And I felt, watching at home, really transported into whatever little weirdo world this was. Even the dancing around in a dog costume for the entire opener didn't turn me off. That's when you know that you've become an accidental Camilizer. Let's return to this idea of crowd pleasing while I introduce what I think is Camila Cabello's central creative dilemma. It seems that Camila's approach to creation, whether this was label influenced or not, was very informed by focus grouping with the public what she should do next in her career. It was like she was metaphorically turning to this Glastonbury crowd, and instead of playing something she loved, she was trying out a bunch of different Havanas and asking the crowd, can I play this? Rather than saying, this is where I'm going as an artist and who I am and want to be, she was almost asking the audience to validate that they liked her and that she was doing the right thing that they wanted to see. Camila's first record, I thought, was not a great debut, but it was promising. It had a couple of different kind of stylistic threads going on, the kind of pop rock stadium chant of Never Be the Same, the Ed Sheeran-esque acoustic ballads like All These Years, the sappy perfunctory piano moments like Consequences, and most compellingly, in my opinion, her sexy, upbeat Latin pop moments, Into It, She Loves Control, and Havana. I have always gotten the sense that what Camila's best at and what she likes to create are sometimes at odds. Those aforementioned 3 songs are the clear standout moments on that first record, yet it was clear that she was very focused on talking up the ballads and was focused on performing those at award shows. And I think that this was kind of a mistake because the songwriting really wasn't there to get invested in. However, the hits and the attitude were. Then we get into what is probably the biggest sophomore flop of all time, Camila's second album, Romance, which was preceded by Camila and Sean's massive collaboration, Senorita, which is truly just like an algorithmically generated hit. We clap and we cheer. Everybody needs one. This with the saucy music video of these 2 young, attractive people. I mean, well, yes, why not? But ask yourself, why were people interested in this song? Was it for Camila? The song is a lot more focused on Sean, and he definitely seemed to overshadow her professionally when they dated, which is a shame because Camila, I think, is much more talented. Let me bring this back to Please, Please, Please. The difference between Senorita and Please, Please, Please is that the latter song is all about Sabrina. Barry is an accessory, not a creative partner. I think Camila did not benefit from the publicity of this relationship because they were often releasing in tandem. And a hot boy is always going to have more of a fervent fan base than a girly on her second middling album. Camila had to do something really good to follow up Senorita, to truly cement herself as an artist, a true solo second single. And guess what? It flopped. When she really, put Sean aside and started to put her boots on to get the romance era started, she began without a clear direction, because here comes the double drop, Liar and Shameless at the same time. As Taylor Swift would say, chase 2 girls and lose the one. There is something about dropping 2 fully formed ideas for a new record, especially your follow-up to a successful debut, that feels confusing to the casual listener that is only starting to know who you are. And these 2 songs, Shameless and Liar, were so clearly testing different vibes. This is what I mean by focus grouping her songs. Shameless, I think, was what Camila felt most connected to and what I think has aged the best. Liar was just giving my label forced me to do this. It wasn't giving I want to do this. It was we need another Havana to fund this project. Even the visuals for these 2 songs felt like they are from completely different projects. Neither one gripped onto the public's imagination in the way that Havana did. I think that's partly because they were spoiled for choice. And if you can believe it, this completely forgettable record had 8 singles. This is insane to me, and I remember watching the rollout in real time and feeling like it was painful to witness. And I kept waiting for a good song song to come out and capture me. Her label threw the entire budget at her for this record, multiple music videos, high-profile appearances and performances, SNL, Ellen, you name it, Camila was on it. And if you can believe it, of those 8 singles, only 2 charted on the Hot 100, and neither of them even cracked the top 50. That's until My Oh My came along. But this is flop behavior. This is truly flop behavior. And you want to hear something even more humiliating about this flop? More than 20 producers alone worked on this album, and even more songwriters. It's shocking. And this is also why it doesn't feel like an album, because how can you possibly come up with a cogent idea when there are 20 cooks in the kitchen giving their different flavors, recipes, and sauces? Camila eventually kind of saved this era a little bit, at least from a label perspective, by releasing My Oh My as a single, which charted well. But again, what does that have to say about this record, that song? There was truly no vision, no creative direction. It felt like they just did a huge writer's camp and picked the best songs without having a total project in mind, and then asked Camila to come up with a concept retroactively. Overall, Romance's biggest crime was that it was boring. There was nothing uniquely Camila about this record. It truly was giving industry plant, and also Camila learned a pretty hard lesson here once the shimmer of being the first girl to leave the group with a hot boyfriend wore off. The audience, the general public, is not loyal to any one particular generic pop hit maker. They are on to the next when they're tired of you, unless you can give them a reason to sink their teeth in. And here's another thing that I think may have contributed to Camila fatigue, and also shows that her label was really trying a lot of different things with her without focusing on something. Camila is a prolific featured artist, and I think this was most apparent in like 2016, 2017, kind of around her earlier work when they were really trying to make her happen as a solo artist. And I think that the label also definitely fumbled the bag here on some features that could have been really huge. Closer, she was considered for, that eventually went to Halsey. The Middle, I think, would have been perfect for Camila, that went to Maren Morris. And interestingly, she even was given a demo of God is a Woman, which wasn't a feature, but I think it's interesting that in some point in history, Ariana and Camila were being offered the same songs as though they were in the same league, as if they were competitors. I mean, that's almost a laughable idea now. Here's a non-exhaustive list of the Camila Cabello features. Senorita featuring Shawn Mendes, Bad Things featuring Machine Gun Kelly, Find You Again featuring Mark Ronson, which, by the way, slapped, Hey Ma with Pitbull and J Balvin, No Better with Major Lazer, Sangria Wine with Pharrell, Beautiful with Bazzi, South of the Border with Ed and Cardi. What do all of these collaborations tell you about Camila? That she is the Rent voice. There isn't really a clear direction or a vibe here, and there's a way to be a prolific features artist while establishing yourself. Look at Nicki Minaj. Even on a mid-song like Meghan Trainor's Nice to Meet Ya, for example, Nicki delivers because she has a sauce. She has a magic that is there to be captured. Then we arrive at Familia, which I think is another stilted and protracted album rollout. Camila said it was inspired by family and food, which, to be honest, is one of the most boring descriptions of a pop album in recent memory. I do really like the cover of her hugging her niece, though. I think that's sweet. Camila is leaning more heavily into Spanish on this record, really kind of doubling down on that Havana thing that she had been flirting with dropping on her last record. But again, I kind of read this era as forced, trying to force another Havana with the lead single Don't Go Yet, for example. And I actually think the song is great, and so is the video, but I think the public at this point was fatigued by Camila's act. She described this record as being the most honest she's ever been, which is always a telltale sign that an artist is about to release something kind of average. She had a real opportunity to do a Shawn Mendes breakup album here. They had just broken up. She could either cook him or, address their relationship more directly. And I think this is where she really fumbles as like a pop star. And I have to wonder, where is the publicist? If you're going to shove Shawn Mila down our throats for months, do weird pandemic pop walks and go to the Met Gala together, then we need you, for your own sake, as a girly, to be milking some of that content in your music to drive interest in you. Nothing works like lore, and Camila has a lot of lore, but she was very evasive about this relationship, and it's only kind of like vaguely addressed on this record. And at the very least, she could have at least let the lead single from this record represent that moment in her life, that breakup. Instead, it was just more boilerplate Camila Cabello fare with Don't Go Yet. By now, she's 5 years into her solo career, and we have seen approximately zero sonic evolution. People are getting bored. This song cracked the top 50 and debuted and peaked to number 42 on the Hot 100. There was an initial interest there, but it was not held. And I think that there was definitely a situation room in the label following this flop, because it took her more than 6 months to cough up a second single. And then we get Bam Bam, which I think is actually a great song. And this is the best of what Camila has to offer when she's in that cheesy bag. It has a fairly generic message. Love knocks you down, but you get back on your feet. It has an incredible hook and has her doing a little Spanglish. It's full of earnestness, sincerity, and personality. And that's what Camila's best at. The power of a pop song is to be able to play it in a crowd of thousands and have everyone feel a big feeling at the same time. And you know what? There's a big feeling on this song. That idea of getting up again after being knocked back down by a bad relationship, I mean, we can all relate. Sadly, Bam Bam was co-written by Ed Sheeran, who also features on it. We don't need him, and we were already having Ed Sheeran fatigue at this point. We didn't ask. But this song charted well globally and peaked at number 21 on the Hot 100. I wonder if we had not falsely launched the Familia era with Don't Go Yet and instead started with Bam Bam, I think, first of all, Bam Bam would have been more successful. And second of all, Camila would have had more visibility in the public eye because this is a breakup song. She'd kind of dropped off the zeitgeist after her and Sean broke up, and to be fair, so did he. But he's like, I don't know, doing some like weird cult stuff in LA, and Camila is still trying to be a good musician. And then we have Psycho Freak featuring Willow, which was all right. It peaked at number 75, and in general, what I have to say with these three singles of Bam Bam, Don't Go Yet, and Psycho Freak is what story is being told here. Don't Go Yet to Bam Bam to Psycho Freak. Where is the food and the family? Camila can never get a vision straight. And if she can articulate a vision, she is typically not able to execute it. Here's another interesting line of lore that Camila completely dropped. She mentions it very vaguely on Psycho Freak. I don't blame the girls for how it went down. That is a whole other gold mine of content that simply was not mine to build our interest in Camila's personal story. It cannot have been easy to orchestrate her exit from the group. In fact, it was already public and very messy and painful. And since that story is out there in the public domain, why not create your own narrative by writing about it directly and benefiting from people's interest in it by playing into it? It's the same thing with Sean. Again, I ask, where is the publicist? If Camila was making otherwise excellent music about something completely different, I wouldn't suggest that she needed to lean into her personal story. But that wasn't happening, so we need to come up with something else. Then Camila seemed to kind of lean into singing in Spanish for a while. I do wonder if that's something she can explore again at a later date. It seems very foundational to her as an artist. Now, how much of these three albums being fumbled is up to her label, Epic, which she left after this record, is kind of debatable. But you cannot say that she was not given the opportunities to succeed. Sure, the creative might have been interfered with by the suits, but Camila was out there in public promoting her work. Frequently, there was a budget being given. Epic is not necessarily known for being a good record label, and you can see this by their current roster, which is not exactly featuring a bunch of contemporary modern hitmakers. Does Camila really want to be in the company of Ciara, Meghan Trainor, and the Black Eyed Peas? Well, no. There is, however, a catch-22 with the whole label situation. At Epic, Camila was a big, relevant fish in a small pond, and I think this is why it was fairly easy for her label to bet on her at the beginning and throw a lot of budget at her to write with a lot of people, make a lot of videos, and appear everywhere to promote her work. But you will notice the budget for Familia was slashed after the flopping of Romance. Camila then signed a new deal with Interscope, who are currently representing such stars as Billie Eilish, Lana Del Rey, and Selena Gomez, Lady Gaga, and so on. Here, Camila is a small fish in a big pond, which brings on its own unique set of challenges. If you're not familiar with how budget works in the industry either way, basically the label will front a certain amount of money to an artist to record, produce, and create all of the content, the songs, the marketing, the visuals for a project, and that amount of money is typically recoupable, meaning that an artist's new project has to make all the money the label invested into it back before they start to see a share of the profit. So if it costs $50,000 to make My Oh My and to make the music video and to send it to radio, that song has to generate $50,000 for the label before Camila's going to see a dime of it. So you can see why, if an artist does not have a track record of releasing profitable music, the budget shrinks and shrinks and shrinks going forward. This is the entertainment business, after all, not the entertainment friendship. And a huge part of being a pop girl is selling well. If you're not selling albums, then hopefully your singles are doing numbers or your tour is selling really well. If you have none of that going on, to be honest, Camila didn't at this juncture of signing with Interscope, then a label is not going to throw a bunch of money at you for your next project. It's just not practical. You haven't proven that you are worth the investment, so to speak. And that is, completely from a business perspective. That is not from like an artistic integrity standpoint. Are there ways around this? Well, yes, artists can get creative and release mixtapes instead of albums, because usually a mixtape will not count towards their overall deal of a certain number of albums. Tinashe did this until she was freed from her contract. Or they can self-fund some of the project. The worst case scenario, however, is that you just get shelved, meaning you're making music, so much of it, and the label is basically saying, not good enough yet, we're just going to not release this, while you keep racking up production costs for all the music you're making. This is a plight that has befallen many an artist, from JoJo to Tinashe, and more recently Normani, who is with RCA, who are notorious for shelving their artists. I give you all this context because we are arriving at a pretty crucial moment for Camila Cabello. She has not been able to consistently deliver hits for a while. She's averaging maybe one per record. That does not yield a true pop girl budget. Make no mistake, it's expensive to be a pop girl, more so than ever before. First of all, we, the audience, want as much content as we can possibly get, so there is a volume demand that we haven't experienced. But also, we want visuals, music videos, we want costumes, different scenes, stars in the music videos, album artwork that's expansive enough to make 4 versions of a record, enough songs to have a deluxe edition. There's a lot that goes into making a pop girl moment, which is why when they flop, it also feels like such an event. So, approaching CXOXO, Camila's first attempt at a new album on a new record label, think about it from a business perspective. You're the suit sitting behind the table looking at Camila's proposal for this record. If you're sitting there planning your yearly budget for an artist project, let's take 2024 as an example. Just this year, Interscope already has Billie releasing, a hugely successful artist with a proven ROI, ready to go. Let's give her a bunch of money. Lana Del Rey is threatening to do another project, and she sells really well, so let's give her a bunch of money. Gracie Abrams is being given her second shot, and she's new, so we need to give her a good chance. Let's give her a lot of money. Where does Camila fall into this? Well, she's a small fish in a big pond now. They're hardly going to throw money at her for this project. I will say that there was more budget for visuals than I expected for Camila this time around, but crucially, I think there was not enough investment in the music or the promotion of said music. Music videos are great, but they are merely conversation starters. They need to be followed up by social integrations, interviews, publicity, etc. And Camila was notably absent for pretty much the entire run-up to this release. Talking about CXOXO, she said, "This album was about sitting with myself and really getting back to that first passion of songwriting, nerding out over references and artists and poetry, whatever, and really tapping into that." Meanwhile, in the studio, it's wrist, wrist, spritz, spritz, Chanel number 5. But I think there is an interesting psychosis that is taking over musicians at the moment where they feel they have to market their record as super personal and artistic in order for it to gain respect. But I compare this to the way that Charli talked about Brat. And you know what? She said very little about it in the way of it being deep or personal. She did mention that some of it was about more kind of like intimate conversations, but overall, she billed it as a club record exclusively. And that was a bit of a bait and switch because yes, it is a club record, but it's also a lot more than that. It's very introspective and genuinely reflective. CXOXO strives for the irreverence of Brat without any of the uncomfortable stuff. The grit, the confessions that don't make you look good, the embarrassment, the tenacity that actually makes something badass, you know? We're not getting Girls So Confusing from Camila here. She brushes up against a commentary on being famous, but doesn't quite go there. Why don't we start with what I found to be good on this record, I suppose, because I do think that despite what I'm saying to you now about how it was kind of a misguided project and how it is kind of a flop, it's 100% a step in the right direction for her, a true transitional album in the sense that she is between things. She is going from one version of herself to another version of herself. What I like most about this record is that there is a clear sonic direction, and the record is sparse. It is much more influenced by like trap, Playboi Carti, for example, than it is by hyperpop. The album was definitely misrepresented by I Love It in the sense that that song is the only thing of its kind on the actual record. The rest of it is kind of a hazy, humid, sweaty dreamscape. And this is where I really start to understand the Miami 305 influence of it all. And that mood and vibe that she's trying to set is almost always conveyed very well through the music, not the lyrics. If she's successful at one thing on this record, I think it's at conjuring an image of Camila's Miami. She gets at this very special kind of anticipatory languishing. At its very best, some of these instrumentals, not the songs, could have soundtracked parts of the Spring Breakers movie, which I think Camila is heavily referencing here visually throughout the entire project. And I see this Spring Breakers influence and also that very acute depiction of Florida on Dade County Dreaming, which is a great title for a song, by the way. But these are like the bones of a good song, which is my main issue with a lot of the songs on this record. Camila seems kind of unsure on how to commit to this new version of herself fully. Perhaps that's because she's in the middle of the transition, hasn't figured it out yet. But I am getting the love letter to Miami on this song. There are truly beautiful moments here. The first part of it is a bit nonsensical, and that is not really helped by the City Girls interjection. It's not that their moment is bad, but they do kind of obfuscate Camila, which is an issue I have in general with her on this record. She's hiding. She outsources a lot of the interesting moments on this album to other people. She yields way too much space to artists that are not her in this very fateful and intentional rebrand. And that makes her look scared, and it makes her seem unsure. Lil Nas X eats her up on He Knows. At best, Camila is a subtle, flirty girl with a wink. Lil Nas X is brash, he's outlandish, and he completely dominates He Knows. Nas is someone who is very realized in his creative vision, so his self-assuredness really highlights Camila's instability here. Let's actually take a moment to talk about how good that Pink interlude is, though. She is a little bit upstaged by Pink Pantheress, but this is truly gorgeous. I wish it was longer. I know that Pink Pantheress is herself against long songs, but this just feels like an incomplete song. This is a song about obsession, a hot, sweaty, humid summer kind of obsession. When she's talking about creating a record for the 305, this is something that is genuinely unique to me. I'm envisioning motel parking lots and gators in the stagnant pond across the street between the strip mall and the gas station, scenes from the I Love It music video, so evocative in just 40 odd seconds. Imagine what it could have done with a little bit more space. Sorry, I'm digressing a bit, but back to the love letter to Miami in Dade County Dreaming. The twinkling piano, the breathy outro vocals, and the dreamy synth in the back half of the song is stunning and very compelling. And I am getting that like Miami at dusk, party before the night out kind of vibe, head out the sunroof, etc., etc. But It then dissolves kind of into nonsense again. Pay the Tessie with the pay stub, rude boy, come and meet your maker. It's these moments where it feels like Camila is trying on something new instead of inhabiting something new. I like this couplet a lot. Party in the city that raised us, party like I forget I was famous. Was is a very interesting word to use there. Wine on him like I'm nameless. Let's get more of that. The song devolves into someone else's version of Miami that is so clearly not hers that we forget that it had anything to do with her in the first place. The city girls are kind of eating her up for part of this. However, it circles back, and this is what I mean, it being the bones of a good song, it circles back to something beautiful at the very end. Dade County dreaming, head out the sunroof, girls are screaming. Back to scheming, sure knows how to give, but she loves receiving. Girl loves the feeling, life in her eyes, everything's fleeting. I can't feel the ceiling, orange skies, I'm never leaving. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the movie Florida. It's a film directed by Sean Baker that chronicles a 6-year-old girl's Florida summer. She lives kind of on the outskirts of Disneyland, I suppose. It is so unbelievably far away from her in her reality, despite literally being next door to her, basically. And you get to see the adult kind of desolation of suburban Florida through a child's eyes. But anyway, this movie is very beautifully shot and very atmospheric. And I think in Dade County Dreaming, Camila really kind of scratches at it in that final couplet, orange skies, I'm never leaving. The idea that Florida is this temporal, semi-godless, climatically unforgiving, but also totally singular nexus of American consumerism, with parking lots and 7-Elevens built into swamplands where gators linger nearby and people cradle their guns in public, the way that Paris toted Tinkerbell around on the red carpet. Camila, you were so close. It only took you a whole song to get to, at the end, something genuinely compelling. But as soon as we close in on this very particular and interesting vision, the song ends. I think there was definitely an opportunity to expound on this vibe that she has created and found in the song Dreamgirls. I love the hook here and the direction that it's taking. This is really giving ode to my friends and the evolution of us partying and hanging out with each other over time. And the message of this song feels very focus grouped, especially when we come to the lead out. It just feels like very boilerplate girl power when the rest of the record is kind of like weird and idiosyncratic. This feels very like playing it safe, Camila. This one's for the girls. If you didn't know, well, now you know. We're learning to be women. Know we keep it sexy while we figure it out. You know who it is that makes the world go round. If you didn't know, well, you know now. A lot of the language on this record feels very empty, which I think is why people are calling it transitional. What I do really like about the production on Dreamgirls specifically is how it kind of leans into Camila's Latin past while also embracing whatever sparse trap-inspired nonsense is going on the rest of the record. You can hear that Latin inflection and that skipping drum beat. It would have been really nice for her to bring some Spanglish in here, maybe sample some of the girlies that she's calling out talking throughout this, a combination of that 305 interlude that really belonged on this song rather than as a boring interlude on its own. This song feels closer again to that snapshot of Miami that she's trying to capture. I am kind of obsessed in general with trying to capture the essence of a place in a song. Lana Del Rey's Norman effing Rockwell does this unbelievably well for California, and in my opinion, 1989 does that really well for New York City. Miami is interesting because I feel like it's not a much written about place in mainstream pop music, certainly by pop girls. We really do be sticking to coastal. But Miami is an extremely fruitful place to mine for inspiration, especially because musically it has so much going on and it's very culturally diverse. If Camila was going to insist on ceding space to other artists on this record, it would have been nice to see her pick more local artists like the City Girls instead of noted Canadian Drake. But we'll get to that in a second. I would say there are two kind of like intimate highlights here on this album, 20-somethings and Boat. Let's start with 20-somethings. Is it a coincidence that both of these songs are vulnerable moments about the highly publicized breakup, which she has evaded singing about? Now that I think about it, actually, the song 20-somethings really reminds me of Real Friends from her debut record. 20-somethings is a song that is very indicative of where Camila is creatively and professionally. It sounds like a direct midpoint between her older work and where she's heading creatively going forward. It's a guitar-focused ballad about growing up, auto-tuned haphazardly and with kind of like a weird talk-sing flow. It really feels Frankensteined, like the song wanted to be one thing but was forced into being another. Dancing While Our Hearts Are Bruising. This is very standard Camila fare. I do like the refrain of when it comes to us, I don't know what the F I'm doing. That's interesting. Like this album and Camila and all of us, 20-somethings is messy and imperfect. There is something so desperately sad about the line in this song, I just want to have a good night. It's such a powerful way to describe the resignation of feeling happy, free, confused, and lonely at the same time. Like, everything in my life is weird. I've lost my hunky celebrity boyfriend. My music career is on life support. I'm blonde now. Can't a girl just have a fun night out with her friends as a treat? I say you can. I say you can, Camila. Moving on to Boat. Boat is a dumb name for a song, by the way. It stands for Best of All Time. I get why she did it, but it's just dumb. The song also has a very strange Pitbull sample, which I'm kind of torn on as to whether I think it's clever or not, but I definitely respect her for doing something weird because she has taken a very hype song, Hotel, Motel, Holiday Inn, and transmuted it to fit whatever she's getting at here, which is feeling played. This song's sonic construction, I would say, is probably not really my vibe, but I really appreciate this as an album highlight and a rare example of like a fully formed execution of the vision that she was going for here. It starts off as kind of like a standard, I miss my ex and I hate what he did to me, but I think she gets at something less expressed in popular music. You never ask me who I'm giving all of my body to now. You never ask me about these nights, baby. I pray that you find out. That's very interesting. You know what? It's really hard to admit that you were the one that loved harder in a relationship, that you miss it more, and that you cared more than they ever did, and you still do, even now that it's over. Her basically being like on this song, all of this is a ploy, this whole new iteration of my life, my public persona, this party girl era, and in fact, perhaps even this entire album is me trying to get you to miss me, to feel jealous of the guys I'm with, to want to know what my life looks like now without you in it. However, it also kind of accidentally betrays the fact that maybe this whole exercise, meaning the album and this new persona, is just another outfit that she's trying on for size and not something super authentic to her. But I think that the glimmers of authenticity are strong enough to make it so. This song definitely gives a lying on a bed in a cheap motel in horrible sheets, staring up at a spackled ceiling with a sluggish fan and a terrible AC, wondering how you'll ever go on again. And just when I think I know how to live without you, I forget why I try. We at the Hotel, Motel, Holiday Inn. You were the best of all time. Here's a song I was kind of intrigued by, Chanel No. 5. First of all, using that as a means for seduction is really interesting. Maybe if you're trying to seduce an 80-year-old man, that scent would be sexy to him, but the Miami girlies are not going out wearing Chanel No. 5. No, no, no. They're wearing Kylie Vanilla 28. They're wearing Love Don't Be Shy by Killian. They're wearing Baccarat Rouge. If not that, they're wearing Cloud. And if not that, they're wearing JLo Miami Glow. Camila has a lot of kind of like aimless signifiers on this record, a similarly nonsensical name dropping of Murakami on this song. Do you actually like or use Chanel No. 5 or pay attention to Murakami's work, or did they just work with the vibe that you were going for and the rhyme scheme you came up with in the moment? I'm not saying that every detail has to be authentic, but the details that she selects throughout this record often feel so aimless and confused that you start to question their authenticity. I do think that her flow here on Chanel No. 5 is kind of hypnotic, and that the song structure is really interesting. There's this like distorted minor key piano sample. That line of cute girl with a sick mind is so unconvincing, because where else do we see her, this sick mind? She appears to us only in glimpses. The second verse of this song is also totally absurd. I'm a dog, woof woof, and my tooth is getting long. Girl, I got violence like Tarantino. See, this is the other thing that the Pitchfork review mentions, is that she's adopting a very sort of toothless version of the Spring Breakers aesthetic. Spring Breakers is characterized by trashiness and violence. Camila's version of this is a very safe, pop girl mediated version of it, and that's not really what's in vogue right now. As I mentioned at the start of this video, it's kind of iconic to be messy or to be daring or to be ugly and to really show your work. Now let's talk about the Drake feature, Hot Uptown. This was probably all orchestrated before he was publicly humiliated, but it just doesn't hit good in this context. I think this would have been more tolerable if it wasn't followed by an entire song. I'm not even going to call it an interlude because it's a song that belongs to Drake on a Camila Cabello record. Why are we giving Drake real estate? He is Canadian. Give Pitbull an interlude if you're just auctioning off slots on your own damn album. Or uplift a local tastemaker, someone who's really driving the culture but not getting the props they deserve in Miami right now. These brief interludes also wouldn't be an issue if the album was substantial, but the record just clears 30 minutes, has 14 tracks, and 3 interludes. If you want an example of how to do a goddamn interlude on a short album, might I direct you to Melodrama. But anyway, this song would have hit really hard in 2017, or whenever Drake's Take Care Too Good run of hits was going on. There's nothing inherently wrong with this collaboration. It's just dated and not interesting. It feels very polished in comparison to what exists on the rest of the record. And again, Camila is kind of eaten up on her own song. Drake is really in his bag here. I do think the production on this song is kind of like the perfect intersection of her Latin pop roots and the trap pop thing she wants to be doing, and Drake is very good at inhabiting that Latin inflection. The production, however, does feel very Drake and not very Camila. It kind of reminds me of Passion Fruit, but on crack. It's a modern version of Miami, sure, but is Camila in the picture? The album concludes with 2 very Lana Del Rey inspired tracks, Pretty When I Cry and June Gloom. There is a gumption on Pretty When I Cry that I really like. The lyrics lyrics are half nonsensical, half kind of vaguely poetic and interesting, but the production is very elegant and spare here. The bridge, she kind of loses me. I'm like, I don't really know what we're talking about. It is just kind of a pure vibes-based song, and the production, especially in the back half, is really stunning. And then we have June Gloom. This is a disaster. This is pure Lana Del Rey highway robbery. Does she get this wet for you, baby? Just feels so cringe coming from Camila, the cute girl with a sick mind that has yet to be identified. This is a very unsure place to finish a record, and I guess that's kind of fitting for what kind of record it is. June Gloom is truly a ChatGPT Lust for Life outtake. In general, Camila's voyage into whatever this is does feel quite derivative of other artists, Lana Del Rey and Charli XCX being my main examples here. Sadly for Camila, the hyperpop tease of I Love It, which was shadily received by Charli at first, then walked back as part of the Brat era, has drawn an unnecessary and unfortunate comparison between Brat and CXOXO, and Camila really only has herself to blame for that, though. The album title, CXOXO, didn't really help the copying Charli allegations either. Sadly, though, because Brat is Charli being so fully in her bag, so actualized in her vision, and so clear on what her purpose as an artist is, that comparison makes Camila's already uneven attempt at a rebrand seem even more unsuccessful. Why buy the Kmart version when you can afford the designer? This rebrand has generated an awful lot of conversation as well that is just not translating into success for the music. I Love It has so far peaked at number 91 on the Hot 100. It turns out that not all press is good press when it comes to your art. Though people were discussing this a lot, the actual music itself has failed to connect. Let's also talk about the release strategy and the lead single. Camila generated a lot of buzz when she debuted her new hair, notably bleached blonde, while filming herself with a Y2K handycam. This was instantly clocked as the start of something new, and I will say I think the image overhaul is interesting and rather successful. She has gagged at a few specific moments with the visuals, more so than ever before. I never would have thought of Camila as a visually innovative or interesting artist, and to a certain extent she isn't, because this visual rebrand is kind of like the music, derivative of something that already exists. But I can't lie, when I saw her sashay onto the stage to do I Love It at Coachella, I was like, serve. The image that she's kind of playing with here is basically kind of like played out at this point. It's giving the main pop girl version of Aisha Erotica, which has already been done in some iteration by Charli at times and Slater and Kim Petras. Before I Love It comes out, a clip of it appears on TikTok, which, as I mentioned, instantly yields unflattering comparisons to Charli's song I Got It. If Camila was smart, she would have organized a Charli feature for this record, or at least an I Love It remix. Apparently that was in the works, but never came to fruition. Before the song comes out, Lana Del Rey bizarrely posts the single cover on Instagram and is like, I love it. And that was the best unintentional promo she could have received. It gave her a bit of a stamp of credibility from a taste maker. The artwork is just an out of focus picture of her grabbing her boobs. So the song comes out on March 27th, and it has a Playboi Carti verse, which is bafflingly the outro to the song. Again, she yields too much space to other people on this record, and is also probably the most interesting part of the song, along with the interpolation of Gucci Mane's song Lemonade. I thought this Pitchfork review of I Love It summed it up quite nicely. The Popstar Lab has their work cut out for them this time. Their mission: convince the world that Camila Cabello is pretty cool and also kind of a goofball. They put in their overtime hours and came up with I Love It, a deranged concoction where Camila chants frothy nothings over a beat that splices a somewhat basic club pop bounce with a messed up use of a pitch-shifted sample of Gucci Mane's Lemonade. It fails its mission, but also it's the only Camila Cabello song that I've come across that has made me feel anything other than complete apathy. And while quite a few of the mega pop stars are begging to be taken so seriously, it's nice to just hear some good old-fashioned expensive nonsense. I think the overall goal of this record and vibe shift was to shed the idea of Camila as a generic pop girl that inspires no strong feelings at all. This at least has been very polarizing. I actually love the I Love It music video. The video is like many of the songs on this record, pure vibes. There are scenes in here that remind me of the Florida Project, where she stuck up the palm tree, where she's dancing in the 7-Eleven. My favorite image actually is her splayed out on the crashed car, which has been done before, but she is still really serving. The video is random. There are also just dogs chasing her down the street, and dogs are a motif that she adopts later on in her performances. For what reason? I don't know. Just to be different, I guess. There was definitely an opportunity to lean more into the Miami of it all here with I Love It, but as I mentioned, an incomplete project on the whole. So I Love It comes out and we hear pretty much nothing for a while after the internet decides that they hate the song. There's no immediate performance. She's not really doing the interview circuit. It's like, here's my song. Okay, the public kind of hates this song. Now that's over. The good thing about doing press or being present is that you have more control over the narrative. You can tell the story if other people are telling it for you. There was a flop narrative about this record out before I Love It was even released, and a copycat narrative too. And, the record ended up not really being a substantial copy of Charli XCX, and Camila could have, talked about that. So her absence didn't really help kind of the negativity the album had prior to it actually coming out. Her first promotion of this is a performance at Coachella, which is a goddamn mess. But that's not her fault. She looks stunning. She was serving choreo. I think Camila's always an incredible performer, so she's gonna eat on stage regardless. But she was singing with Lana Del Rey, who somehow was unable to even hum the bars of I Love It, despite loving it so much herself that she posted it on Instagram. This performance was live streamed but not recorded for her official YouTube channel. Why are we doing free promo in the middle of someone else's Coachella set for a lead single a month after it comes out? She baffles me. But again, the single didn't connect and it wasn't charting. So I return to the label's perspective here. If they're not buying and streaming, why bother spending money and promoting? Her first televised performance for her lead single that came out in March was on June 3rd. 3 months later, we get one performance of the lead single. I mean, come on now. Do you care? Do you care? He Knows is announced as the second single in May, and despite a feature from viral hitmaker Lil Nas X, the song also fails to connect and fails to chart. This is definitely the most generic song on the record, I would say. It has a great music video that definitely had some budget behind it, but that was totally wasted on a mid-song. Sad. Chanel No. 5 is the final pre-release single, and it gets like a low-budget music video of her molesting a chair, so there's that. Then finally, there is some promo, but honestly, it's a little bit too late. The people are actually interested in Charlie Chappell and Sabrina at the present moment, and they are not checking for Camila, and this is reflected in the album's streaming performance. It got 7 million streams on its first day. Let's compare this to her label mate and fellow pop girl Billie Eilish, who got 72 million streams on the first day. Camila is now currently on a European summer tour and is doing a very interesting set, the same one that she did at Glastonbury, for crowds that frankly look uninterested. The challenge that she's going to face now as a performer going forward is that people are not interested in the new music, yet she simply must play it in order to force the rebrand. Her older songs are also, particularly the Latin influence numbers, so far out of reach sonically from what she's doing now that it is extremely hard for her to weave them in naturally to her set without either disappointing the crowd by changing them too substantially or ruining the flow of the show. The performances that she's giving on stage at these European shows, I've watched a couple of them on top of the Glastonbury set, is much more for the camera, for the people at home, which makes for a good show on the internet but a weird time on stage. There's a lot of like little bits of acting that she does. I don't know how to describe it. If you're a fan, you'll like it, but if you're a casual festival goer, you will be perplexed and underwhelmed. Again, the crowd that gathered for her at Glastonbury this year was honestly small and they were not excited. And I think that says it all, really. The cold hard truth of did this album do well? Do people like it? Is how it is received at a festival where you have the biggest sample size of casual listeners imaginable. There's so much going on at Glastonbury or a festival in general that if you bore a crowd, they can simply leave your show and attend someone else's instead. And that's definitely what happened with Camila, drawing such a small crowd to what should have been a bigger set. I'd like to conclude by saying that I actually think Camila is being really brave currently. She's trying something new. I don't think it was a success in the sense of it being a great album or great music, but I do think it was a successful attempt at making her more interesting. This was the first full-length Camila album that I've sat through where I've walked away from it wondering about her creative decisions. I was not apathetic towards it, and it definitely ignited a response, albeit a response sometimes of frustration from me. But you know, I love to be interested. I love to be challenged, and I'm seated for whatever Camila does going forward. And I have to say that the album tracks have really grown on me over time. There's a lot to be interested in. If you're interested in pop music and you're interested in left of center pop, Camila is trying to do something interesting. And you know what? God loves a trier. He really does. That's all I have for you in this video. Leave me a comment and let me know what you thought of Camila's rebrand. Is this your favorite album of hers? Is it something that you hate? Do you love it? It's polarizing. So let me know in the comments what your response to it emotionally was, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.